All right, shalom. Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah Barakatah. This is the Isupk. Started out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, 1969. Under commanding General Yohana, we are here to teach the truth of the Bible that so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native American Indians are the real Israelites of the Bible. Now, every week on Friday, we go into the ancient Lashon Kodash, which is the Holy Tongue. We'll go into the ancient Hebrew. Okay. Well, we go into the ancient Hebrew to break down the Bible in our most original language that we could possibly get to, right? The Lashon Kodash is the Holy Tongue, which is the oldest language on the planet. And in taking the modern day Hebrew, like what you see right here, and reverting it back to its old characters, we learn how to read both, but we read it with the dialect of the Lashon Kodash and not like Yiddish or modern day Hebrew. And so what we do in this class is, again, we start to go over some of those basic vocabulary terms, sentence structure rules. We'll go into a lot of vocabulary. We'll even go into specific scriptures to write this whole entire scripture down on the board so that when we go and read them, that we understand exactly why we're reading the Bible the way we do and why the sentence structure is put the way that it is, with all the proof that's necessary to show that that is in fact what it is saying. Couple things you want to keep in mind when you're coming into the Lashon Kodash class is, of course, knowing the alphabet, which we have here as a reference on the right side of the screen. We always want to make sure to mention that for any new students, because what you're seeing on this side of the screen is basically just these characters over and over. It's the same characters. We're not making it any kind of more complicated than it needs to be. And that's another reason why we like to use the ancient Hebrew, because it's even less complicated than the modern Hebrew, which makes it easier for our people to come back to their real heritage, to come back to their true Ebonics, so to speak, because that's exactly what Hebrew is. Hebrew is nothing more than trying to make our language as quick and to the point as possible, just like how Black and Hispanic folks do the same thing in their day-to-day speech, whether we're speaking English, whether we're speaking Spanish, French, whatever slave language we've been forced to speak and have inherited in the lands of our captivities all throughout the four corners of the earth. We have then started to, of course, master those languages, but we now have to come and master our original language, our original culture, our heritage. It brings Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans together under one language that is the derivative of all modern languages of today. So going into what we picked up on last week, we're gonna touch on one of the scriptures that we covered. We're going to come back to 1 Samuel chapter 17 at a later time. Today we're going to go into something different, but I will recap what we previously talked about over the past few weeks, whereas we were going over the story between David and Goliath. And going over that story in the ancient Hebrew gives a much more dire, gruesome, gritty understanding of what happened, because when we hear about David and Goliath, a lot of people refer to that very famous battle. It is most likely one of the most famous one-on-one physical confrontations of all time. It is mentioned even to this day in modern sports and pop culture. You know what I'm saying? People always mention David and Goliath, but what actually happened in that encounter? And reading it in the Bible in English is one, of course, it tells you exactly what happened, but reading it in the Hebrew gives you an even deeper understanding of what exactly happened, because we're starting to go into the Lashon Kodash, where we understand even more about our culture in reference to this particular story. Now, we've gone over a couple vocabulary words over the past week. We're going to briefly cover them. All right. I'm going to start with what we have up here. Of course, Goliath. You see the name Goliath right here. It's using 4 characters that go from right to left. Just like how the Most High's name goes from right to left in Yahweh, YHWH. Goliath's name is Goliath. Goliath is a famous name throughout in history, and so it only makes sense that his name stayed as closely to the original pronunciation that we even call him in modern times. And this is something that ancient Hebrew has done that has held up over the years. Some of these characters look similar to even characters that are used in modern languages. For example, La looks like an L. Ka looks like a backwards K. Za looks like a Z. Wa looks like a Y, which is pronounced like the same character Wa. Ha looks kind of close. Ah looks like an A that's tilted over. Ma and Na have the same parameters, meaning more squigglies on the Ma versus less squigglies on the Na, right? So you're actually seeing some similarities. Ra, you know what I'm saying? Some of those characters have withstood the test of time and have been translated into other forms drastically in some cases, like in the modern Hebrew, but even English, Spanish, and other languages still, and even Chinese and Japanese, still hold true to some of these characters that are very similar in some ways. But the original pronunciation of this character in the Bible, whose name is Goliath, is Galayath. Galayath. We went over, of course, the main character of the story, which is King David, which is a perfect teaching point when you're first starting to learn about the truth of the Bible and about the symbolism and the culture of those that were spoken of in those times. King David's name is Dawada. The alternative for his name is Dawayad, but the main pronunciation of his name is Dawada, which is to join together the Da from the beginning and the Da at the end. And that is how he came up with his family crest, his signet, his seal, which is what we know now of as the shield of David. It is not a star, okay? It is the shield with 12 sides, 12 angles on the outside, right? 12 angles on the outside, 12 tribes of the nation of Israel is a perfect joining of an initial for somebody. And King David wanted everybody to know that that was for Israel. Every time you see this, it represents blacks, Hispanics, Native American Indians, and the greatness that our people have achieved over history. Now, in this particular story, David is killing a Philistine by the name of Goliath, who is a dark skinned person as well. David being dark skinned, Goliath being dark skinned, but they come from completely different seeds of people. You understand? After the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth had broken off, you had a lot of different separation amongst tribes of people on the earth, right? Coming from the seed of Shem, King David, eventually his people from the tribe of Judah and the tribes of Israel had animosity with the Philistines. And in the beginning of this battle, as we read in the previous verses, matter of fact, we'll go ahead and read that just to catch up to where we are. Those of you that are tuning in, we're going to start off in English and then we're going to jump into Hebrew once we get to verse 48. But I want to briefly cover that because this is a very important event in Israelite history. And like I said, is even mentioned even to this day. Now, we're going to 1 Samuel. Let me see here. Chapter 17. Just so you can see what happened here. All right. I want to get to when the battle starts. Okay, we're going to start at verse 20. So, 1 Samuel chapter 17 and verse 20 says, "And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight and shouted for the battle." Verse 21, "For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army." So you had the Israelites and the Philistines who were tactically placing their armies to prepare to go to war with one another, each side looking for advantages, weak points, using the resources that they have, using the weapons that they have to see if they could gain an advantage. So they're sizing each other up at this time. The King David, or who would soon to become King David, right? Who would actually catch wind of this action going on, and we're going to read about his mentality and his process, seeing and hearing that his people were in need of help and taking action and having the initiative to do what was necessary to get the job done. And it says, verse 22, "And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage and ran into the army and came and saluted his brethren." So Israel acting like an army right here. People talk down on the Isupk because we're too militant. They say that we're a cult. People always have a lot of assumptions that they assume from the outside looking in. They don't understand that because we have such a scriptural foundation to everything that we do, that we are simply following the footsteps of our forefathers. And that's exactly what King David did. He ran and dropped everything he was doing, being that he was a keeper of the carriage, keeper of farming duties. And he dropped what he was doing and left that with the And he left that with somebody else and ran up to help his brothers out. And in doing so, he came up to the army, and it says in verse 22 at the end, it says, and came and saluted his brethren. Now, that being said, here's a good chance to actually look up the definition of what it says to salute. So it goes, salute. Okay. Let me see. Inquire of. We'll go with that definition. The word salute. You can find this in the Strong's definition for biblical Hebrew, H7592, and it goes as follows: Sha'al. Sha'al. We call it Barak. Also it means to bless. A salute in this case is an inquiring, meaning that it was a greeting, but it was a formal greeting. Okay, so the definition of that is to inquire. Let me see. It says to grant, to make over, to ask, or give or lend on request. So you have different definitions of salute, but the definition of salute and the pronunciation is sha'al. Sha'al. You understand? Continuing here, it says, verse 23, and as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words. And David heard them. Verse 24, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were sore afraid. Now here's the thing. This man must have had a stature that was very intimidating, very menacing. For you're talking about Israelites, as hardcore as our people are, that this man put some doubt in their mind, some fear in their mind. But like in all cases, a righteous leader will be one that stands up without any fear of what the enemies will think of them, of what the enemies will portray them as, or what the enemies will even do to them. A righteous leader is one that will take up the mantle of a priest, of a warrior, of a king, to do what is necessary to keep the sanctity of their people strong. And this is what David saw. He saw the people were afraid. Verse 25. And the men of Israel said, have ye seen this man that is come up, surely to defy Israel? Is he come up that it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel? And so this thing had happened before. And so basically what's going on is that this there's a deal being made. Whoever can take this man out will be given a higher status in the society. It can be done as a reward for basically saving them that day. Now, here's the thing about this. The acts of David on this day is nigh unto salvation of his people, because how many men would be spared because of a champion taking out another champion, and this securing the lives of many soldiers who would then who would have instead had to go into battle and fight against a massive army. So this was a different approach to warfare. This was, send me your best soldier and I'll send you my best soldier, and they're going to duke it out on behalf of our armies. And so what King David is looking to do is he's looking to save his people's lives. These men that had fear struck in them. It was unfortunate that happened, that they had gotten so afraid of Goliath. But what you're seeing here is it became an opportunity for David to step up. Verse 26. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Verse 27. And the people answered him after this manner, saying, so shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, let me just look at his Hebrew name, Eliab, the eldest brother, heard when he spoke unto the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and said, why comest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou had come that thou might seest the battle. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him and toward another and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him after the former manner. Verse 31. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. Verse 32. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. Verse 34. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Verse 36. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. So what's going on here? We're reading about King David making his case to show Saul that he is qualified to fight this Philistine. While the Saul is showing him, man, you can't go up against this Philistine. You're just you're still a youngin. You're a young blood. You're talking about this is somebody that's been killing since he was your age. And you want to go and fight against him. And David said, Oh, hold on a minute. I done killed a lion. I done killed a bear. Ain't no many men out there that can say that they've done that. And I did it without sword and spear. He's going to explain why. I'm going to read on. It's going to explain why I'm saying that he didn't use a sword or spear, because he is not adept in those weapons, but he is adept in an alternative form of warfare, ranged warfare. And this is something that, of course, could benefit him in this fight. It's what gave him the confidence that he felt that he had needed to fight against the Philistine and to save his people. Verse 37. David said, Moreover, the Lord that delivereth me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. Verse 38. And Saul armed David with his armor. Armor right here. So I'm looking up that number right now. Here it is, armor. 4055. Madmad. His armor is a garment, a measure, a cloth. Basically, what we're saying though is a vesture. Armor in our culture is the same thing as a garment. And so a lot of times you see brothers that are out there, during the Sabbath service, during camp, wearing clothes that is thick enough that it damn near could take a sword strike because of how much leather there is. You wouldn't be able to cut through it in one strike, at least not broadly, maybe pointedly. But what you got to understand is that this is one of the layers of clothes that was given to King David to go and fight, because they're thinking he's going to get hit. So he needs defense. And so you got armor, you have mail, and it's going to mention that too. It says, and Saul armed David with his armor, and he put on an helmet of brass upon his head, and he armed him with a coat of mail. What is mail? Sharyah is body armor. Mail, or quote unquote chain mail, is a manufactured metallic interwoven layer of clothing made out of actual metal, which would be made either out of brass, nickel, and of course, depending on what your resources are, it could be stronger, like gold or silver. But mail, of course, would add to your weight. Heavier clothes would add to your weight. So when you're looking at striking somebody while also trying not to get hit, you wear armor for reason of in case you get hit. While somebody that is ultra confident may not want to wear the armor and the mail that's going to add to his weight and slow himself down. So King David, or sorry, I keep saying King David, he's not king at this point yet. He has to understand what decision he needs to make to be most successful in battle, and that's what a true leader will do. Is they'll survey the landscape to see what resources are available and what is needed for the particular task that's at hand. Not to just throw everything they got full force and to just exhaust their resources and assume that there's only one way to get something done. To be able to adapt, to be able to be cunning and to think of war tactics. This is something that David is showing himself to be a master of, or at least to be somebody who is natural at, right? So he's saying again that Saul armed David, this is verse 38, with his armor, and he put on a helmet of brass upon his head. Also, he armed him with a coat of mail. Verse 39, and David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. So word essayed means beginning to show willingness, to undertake, to agree, to resolve, to be pleased, or to be determined. So it said, and essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off of him. So David had the armor, had the chainmail, you know what I'm saying, had the sword, you understand? He decided, this ain't the way that I'm going to do this, because this is not what I'm used to. This is not what I'm trained in. I'm not been given the skills I haven't trained in the skills to use these in combat. But, and that's why this is what kind of made Saul kind of surprised, because he's seeing him using a different form of warfare, which is, different from what was expected of him, because he doesn't want to be an embarrassment. He doesn't want to come across, Saul wouldn't want David to come across as a joke. But David was serious about this. Verse 40, he says, and he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrip, and his sling was in his hand. And he drew near to the Philistine, sling, H7050, qualia, which is a sling, a drape. Think of it like the material you would use on a curtain, but he would have it in a fashion, in a way that it would be something that would be able to hold a rock at one end, and he would be able to hold the other end to swing it. You know what I mean? Less like a rope, but more like a drape. So, like I said, a sling, right? You know what I'm saying? Or like when you think of a sling, like what holds an AR or a rifled weapon up on your body. A sling would be kind of like a rope, but with a thicker body to it. You know what I'm saying? So think of it like that. It says, verse 41, and the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy and of a fair countenance. Ruddy meaning like a lighter red, like a lighter brown, like as if he hadn't been in the sunlight as often, to, you know what I'm saying, to, like it was almost like as if he's saying that his skin was not rough like somebody who had been at war. Like, you know how a construction worker's hands are like over the years, given that, say they do construction 10, 15 years, and their hands are just naturally like rough looking. The fingers might be more thicker because they're so used to carrying stuff. The fingers have no choice but to adapt to the lifestyle of work that person has, to where, hell, even muscle is built on the fingers themselves. Well, meanwhile, King David being ruddy, meaning being green or being brand new, somebody that's more smooth, somebody that is inexperienced, and he could tell just from his countenance, from his look, and that's could be deceptive, right? That maybe actually be deceptive. Israel is known to one thing. Israel is known to get strong at a young age. Look at Mike Tyson, for example, who was a champion before he even turned 20 years old, and you would say he was fair skinned, meaning he was softer and youthful, but was still strong and ready for action. You know what I'm saying? King David being younger, meaning his body had not been built up to the stages of what you would now know is war ready. If you look at brothers that are in the NFL or people that go into the NBA, they're always talk during the draft prospecting, oh, well, he has an NBA ready body. Or they'll say if somebody's real skinny, oh, well, he's going to need to work out more so that he could grow into his height, or you know what I'm saying, that he could bulk up. And so that's what the Philistine is doing. He's looking for the outward appearance of David, and he's looking at him in doubt that this could be even any kind of competition against him. All right. So he says, verse 43, and the Philistine said unto David, am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? He's talking about King David's staff, right? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. Verse 45, then said David to the Philistine, thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. So King David, with all the confidence of knowing that, yes, this man has weapons of war on him. This man is used to this type of warfare. But because he has the living God behind him, there is nothing that is going to stop him from achieving victory in that warfare. And that's what our people have to understand. Because in order for you to come into the Isupk under Commanding General Yohana, in order for you to find success on our battlefield, which is found in the streets at camp, which is found in the classrooms where you have to study, which is found, when we're doing community work amongst our people, that you have to not be afraid of what the enemy has. They could have a space force, they could have tanks, they could have armored plates, they could have all these things, but none of those things are at the power of what is behind our spirit. And that's what this is what David, who would be king after, shortly after these actions that he's doing, if you're able to recognize that at a young age, then you can go far in the progression of your spirit in this lifetime and your warfare against the enemies of Israel. And understanding that the nations are seriously but a drop of a bucket. Most High has them there for you to run over them. But you have to be willing to take that role in being that person, to be the bulldozer, to take over this planet, to be the trailblazer, to be the one teaching classes, to be the one learning in the classes, to taking part in putting your brick in and building this truth across the four corners of the earth. That is the same spirit that is in you, much like how it was in King David. When you come into this truth, you have to have no fear. You have to be courageous. You can't be afraid of what your family thinks about what changes you're going through. You can't be afraid of, you can't be ashamed of putting on the fringes and stopping celebrating Christmas and telling all your friends you grew up with in the world, I'm not going to celebrate New Year's. I'm not going to celebrate Easter because I'm doing something different. Y'all coming at me with the normal things, with the spears and the shields. Y'all coming at me with the knowledge of this world. But I'm not going to take that approach no more. And King David is showing exactly how to do that in in the example that he lived in right here. It says, verse 46, this day will the Lord deliver thee unto my hand, and I will smite thee and take thine head from thee. And I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. Verse 48, and it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. So while Goliath was walking up to King David, David was sprinting towards Goliath. And I'm going to leave it on that because we're going to come back to this at a later time. But you got to understand that sometimes you got to dive in head first with the confidence that what you're doing is the right thing. That's what faith comes from. Faith is the substance of things not seen, the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen. And so David here may not actually see how he's going to win this battle, but he knows that he is going to win it. And so he's diving headfirst into it. And we're going to dive headfirst into this class here today. So with that, of course, I am Officer 50 Ayalawan Bonza Balawan out of Isupk, San Antonio, Texas. This is what we're going over today. We're going to briefly read this scripture, and then we're going to go and we're going to pull one of our most well-known, well-loved camp scriptures, which I want to break down in the Lashon Kodash. So it was when arose the Philistine and came and drew near to meet David, that hastened David and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. Now, don't be confused on how this is actually being said, because Hebrew is read from right to left. And so even though the sentence structure may seem like it is different from when you say things in English, this is how Hebrew is written. It's almost like backwards speaking, right? I always use the joke about Yoda and the way Yoda talks backwards. Well, that's actually how Hebrew is. So maybe he was on to something, right? And so it was Wahayah when Kaya arose Quam, the Philistine, Ha Palashathya, and came Wahalak, and drew near Waya Quarab. Is it Quarab or Qarab? Oh yeah, no, Quarab, to meet David. So La Quaraath Dawada, that hastened Waya Mahar, David Dawada again, and ran Waya Rataza, toward the army. I don't know, in their linear version of the Bible Hub app, it says the toward army, but I guess that's just because ha is always at the beginning when the word the is used. So it is ha ma'iraka, ha ma'iraka. So army is ma'iraka. All right. And then it says to meet the Philistine. La Quaraath ha Palashathya. La Quaraath ha Palashathya. So now I'm going to read the whole sentence in the ancient Hebrew so you can start to get the flow of how the sentence is and how we say things. Wahaya Kaya Quam ha Palashathya Wayalak. One second, yo. All right, slow on crack. Go ahead and lock it behind you. All right, from the beginning. Wahayala, Kaya, Quam, Hapalashathya, Wahalak, Wayakwarab, Lakwarath, Dawada, Wayamahar, Dawada, Waya Rataza, Ha Ma'iraka, La Quaraath, Ha Palashathya. All right. As we continue to learn the language, you'll start to be able to read this faster and faster. But another part of what we do when we break down any precept or any sentence within a precept is, when available, I will go over the root words, and that's why you have you have three different colors here, and I use these three different colors on purpose, right? Let me see. Where's red? There you go. Red we use for the English translation, so you at least have a grounding of what is being said. Blue is what we use to actually write the Hebrew letters, okay, which is what we're going to actually pronounce as we read it. And green is used to outline the root words so that you can understand the vocabulary within each phrase that is used. You understand? And so, like example, rose, quam, that's the word by itself. Quam means to rise. Okay, when we say quam yasha'Allah, rise Israel. You understand? Quam is what that is. So be it, right? So you have different root words. Philistine, Palashath, Lakah, or Lak in this case. And you have different root words that we outlined so that you can understand exactly what is the main word in each phrase. Now, the extension of the vocabulary is where you see the prepositions and the possessive adjectives, as well as other rules that are implemented, where you have these extra characters that are put at the beginning, middle, or end of any of these phrases. So, without getting too complicated, and we're going to switch gears here in a sec, that this is just a more advanced example of all the basics that we go over every week. And so, going over things like this really start to build the vocabulary and the confidence that you need in reading the Hebrew in its original form. So that's really all we're doing when we go over this stuff. Um, but the good news about that is that if there's ever any scriptures that you want to have covered, you can let us know in the comment section, and then perhaps we can forge an entire class the following week based off of a scripture or scriptures that you're interested in seeing broken down in the ancient Hebrew. All right. And that'll give us, again, an opportunity to not only teach you how to say specific verses, prayers, excerpts within the Old Testament, where you're going to see all of the Hebrew being used in the Bible, right? Because when you look at the Apocrypha and the New Testament, it is not written in Hebrew, it is written in Greek and in Latin. Okay. And before you can even begin to translate the Apocrypha and the New Testament into Hebrew, you have to have mastered, you have to have mastered the Hebrew in order to do that. All right. So we're going to come back to 1 Samuel chapter 17 at a later time. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to go into Isaiah, I think it's 45 and 17. Go ahead and get that scripture. Yep. One of the cornerstone scriptures of our John 3:16 breakdown, right? Isaiah 45:17. That's about it, right? Yeah. It's right there. Mm-hmm. So if you can start practicing reading this gives you a heads up over what we're going to be covering here. Okay. Everlasting. So we got. Hmm. Well, that makes sense. Disgraced. Damn. Let me just recheck everything here. Let's see. That part's done. So we put the whole entire verse on the screen here. Now, while I'm writing this, doesn't mean you could just sit down and not do nothing. I want you to start trying to sound out these words. Now, keep in mind, Hebrew, what we do is we put these here to assist you. See these marks under the under the characters and the phrases? If a mark is a squiggly that looks like a frowny face, that means this character is pronounced by itself. But when it's joined to another one, then it starts with the pronunciation of this one and then ends with the pronunciation of this one. So if this is Shah and this is Ra, Shar is how it would be put together. Yashar Allah. And this is Israel. Israel shall be saved. By Yahweh. Salvation. Dang, that's heavy. Now let's start off with it. Go ahead and read it in English. Let's get that Isaiah 45 and 17 in English, like we usually read it. Go ahead. Uh huh. Mm hmm. Yeah. So he says, "But Israel shall be saved in the Lord with an everlasting salvation. Ye shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end." This is a heavy way to look at the scripture because reading it in English, you kind of get an idea of what it's talking about. But when you start to break this down in Hebrew, you have to analyze it word for word. You have to look at this with both eyes open because this is no longer the same sentence structure. Some of the words aren't even the same, but you could tell that when they tried to make it into English, they tried to keep it as original as it possibly can. So, going in some of this vocabulary, Yashar Allah, that's the actual root word, Israel, shall be saved. The word saved is Yashai. Yashai. This is part of it. Yashai is save. Nawashai, she means shall be saved. By Yahweh, root word being Yahweh, right? YHWH. That right there is a 4-letter word for the Most High and should be all the evidence that you need to understand that this form of Hebrew and its modern day Yiddish is not accurate. It is the ancient Hebrew that doesn't use vowels that is accurate. Like when we read about David's name as Dawada, there is no vowels in his name, much like there's no vowels in the Most High's name. Does that mean we're trying to put ourselves at the level of the Most High? No. That just means that this is the oldest form of the language that is so sacred that not even the heathens tried to mess with the Lord's name by adding vowels to it. But he went and added vowels to damn near everything else. You understand? Um, oh, salvation, root word, Yashai, root word Yashai. I'm gonna just put that in the corner here. H 3467 is Ya shy. Ya shy. Save. There's a vocabulary today, a little bit of that. Ya shy. I can't even really put that here because you can see how I put the wa in there. Salvation. Tha. Sha. Tashawaya. Tashawaya tha is how it's pronouncing it. Tashawaya tha. There's other rules that are being implemented here. But then again, like I said, this comes down to dialect. So technically, salvation, save, if you use the word yashai, that basically means the same thing. As long as you get the gist of what is being said, you can always go back to the root word and you will be correct. But this is, of course, us going character by character in a modern Hebrew sense. And we're translating it as we go. Everlasting. I walam yum. I walam is the root word here. Everlasting. I walam. When we read that, you actually hear this all the time when we read the Lord's Prayer, where we say La I walam yum. It means forever. That's why it's everlasting, which means long duration. And this is if this is long duration, and then we're adding yum at the end, it's like saying a long time, but multiple long times. You know what I'm saying? So we're saying I will lum yum, which is basically saying forever. It's like saying forever and ever and ever. It's like we're saying long time, like, just to exemplify exactly how long this is going to be. So long duration forever is H5769 I wa lum. I will lum yum. Not, of course, not is la'ah. That's one of our more modern day common words, right? La'ah. Not, you shall be ashamed. Let's see what the root word is there. Ashamed's root word is bawash. Bawash. There's usually a wa that's here, but in this sentence structure, it's moved to the end. Tabashwa. 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 Now, prepositions, tabashwa, yeah. Or, nor confounded. Wa la'ah. Think about that. What does that mean? It says salvation with the everlasting. Basically, Israel shall be saved by the Most High, salvation everlasting. Remember, because it says with an everlasting salvation, but when you're reading the sentence structure of Hebrew, it is salvation with an everlasting amount, is what it's saying. And then going to the next thought here is, and if I put this here, this kind of helps you break it up, because this is one part of the sentence, and then this is the second part of the sentence. So, not ashamed or disgraced. So if I'm adding something, when I say or, that means that in the English it says nor, right? Nor means another or. You understand? Because if you say either or, that means it could be this or it could be that. But when you say nor, it means it's neither this nor that. You understand? So I'm saying wala'a, which means and no. You understand? So it says you're not going to be ashamed. You're also not going to be what? But what does it say in English? Read the scripture in English. Confounded. So we got a different word here. The word confounded in this scripture is translated to the Strong's definition H3637, which means kalam. Kalam, which means kalam, which means to insult, shame, humiliate, blush, be ashamed, be put to shame, be put to confusion, be humiliated. You understand? So when it's saying you are not going to be ashamed nor disgraced, meaning you're not going to be insulted to be an Israelite. You're not going to be dishonored. You're not going to be put to shame. You're going to stand up on YouTube videos. The whole world's going to see you are not being disgraced. The heathens are the ones that are being disgraced. You're not the one that's being put to shame. They're the ones that are being put to shame. You're the one that knows the truth. They're the ones that are confounded. So the word confounded means more than just confused. It means that you have the moral authority on the earth again. So when we're saying that Israel shall be saved, hold on a second. We have to back up because this is really very important. Let me see. I actually didn't finish. Hold on. Forever and ever. Wow, that is crazy, son. So get this. In the interlinear version of the Hebrew Bible, it doesn't finish the verse, because the most important part of the verse is where it says world without end, right? But in here it says you shall not be ashamed nor disgraced forever it says to forever and ever. It doesn't mention the word world in this verse, if I'm going by this interlinear version. But what it does say is what? Israel shall be saved by the Most High with an everlasting salvation. Meaning what? That, well, okay, what does it mean to be saved? Right. If I look up the word salvation, it says deliverance, help, right? It says Yashai, which means to deliver. It means to avenge, to gain the victory, to preserve, to be victorious. You understand? So if Israel is the one that's being victorious with an everlasting salvation, what is it actually saying? It's saying that our people will be removed from being put to shame. They'll be removed to being confused about who they are. They'll be removed from being lied to. They'll be removed from all these things with an everlasting salvation. So salvation is us gaining the victory. Salvation is us getting the ability to be correct, to be morally sound, to not fall into the traps of the other nations and not celebrate their cultures, to not be forced to celebrate their cultures. And so you cannot have salvation for the whole earth, because this scripture is saying that Israel is being saved from the whole earth. Because these things about us being ashamed and confounded and disgraced are because the other nations are the ones that are doing the disgracing on us. And so if we are to be saved with an everlasting salvation, that means we're being removed from that condition continuously forever and ever. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like it doesn't exactly use the word world in this case. But that's okay, because when I continue into this next verse, it starts to zero in even more so on the fact that Israel is the one that the Most High chose for salvation. You understand? So when it says world without end, that is what it's talking about when it's saying forever unto forever. So when we read this verse, it says, we're going to read this verse now. Yashar Allah, Nawashai, Ba Yahweh, Tasha wa ayat, Slakia, Ta Sha wa ayata. I walamyum, La'ah, Tabashwa, Wala'ah, Ta Kalam wa. I'd, I walam ya, Ida. It actually has these written as different. So this is I'd, and then this is Ida. One of them is correct. So what we're saying here is that it is Israel that is going to be saved forever and ever. It doesn't mention the other worlds. It doesn't mention the other nations. And this is so important, because if I look up, let me see. world. 5769, long duration, forever. Remember, it could mean either one. Long duration is what a world is, a time. Remember? An era. That's what a world is. An era is either a place or a time frame. Like you think of like the prehistoric era, the Jurassic era, those are different worlds. Those are different times. Those are different long durations. So when I go into the Strongs and I see the word world, the Hebrew lexicon right next to it, H5769, is the word that ties to forever. You understand? So it's saying that this Israel is an everlasting world, an everlasting time. So the word world is actually forever or long duration. Well, it may seem like forever because, of course, humans only live what, like 80, 100 years, right? That seems like a long time, but know that that's actually what word is translated from the Hebrew is the word forever, which means an age or society. When you look up the definition for world, what is it going to say? Age or society. So the word forever also means long duration, which is an age. Does that make sense? And what age is going to be? And this is why it says everlasting salvation, because it had repeated itself. It says that Israel shall be saved by the Most High with the salvation that is everlasting. I will lum yum. So not only do you have the long duration, but you have I will lum yum, which is telling you that it's a rolling duration, meaning a continuous salvation, a continuous world. The whole entire verse is saying that that world is not going to end. You see what I'm saying? So now when you look at this scripture, you understand that the whole world that it's talking about is Israel. That's the age that matters. And if you don't believe me, then we're going to go to the next verse. And it's just going to say the same thing. So I'm going to give you a second to get that on the screen. I'm going to make sure to share the class. We'll give it a second for you to write that down because we got to go into the next verse to continue this thought process the Most High had put in this verse. Most High Christ. Most High Christ says, big ups to Sister Olivia, you know what I'm saying, tuning into the class. I hope that, hope you were able to, he says, why the room dark and see what you're writing. Oh, yeah, I'm going to try to see if I can get some more light in here. Hold on, let me see if this helps. Give me a little bit more lighting, okay? All right. All right, I'm gonna leave this on the board for a second. If you need to screenshot this, if you need to write down some of those Strong's definitions, definitely take the time to do so before we go into the next verse. I'm gonna give it like 2 more minutes, all right? Yeah, it's crazy, right? What we just did is we just broke down Isaiah chapter 45 and 17. And not only did this back up what we've been saying this whole time, we realized that the whole entire verse is talking about an everlasting world. The whole verse. Because the word world is Iwalam. And Israel being Iwalam Yum means what? An everlasting world. An everlasting long duration of time. That's just it's almost poetic the way the Most High has these definitions and this Hebrew waking us up in this day and age, because we're starting to see the truth in a way that makes it so solidified in our minds that there's no way that we'll have any doubt. You know, we just read about King David, how he didn't have any doubt after finding out that he has the God of the living God behind him. And so to find out that the living God of Israel, the Most High, Yahweh, is the one that is saving you right now, giving you salvation right now as we're reading these scriptures, because you're actually being saved right now with you tuning into this class, learning this language, changing your life, you know, overcoming your situations, your problems. That is just the beginning of your salvation. We haven't even begun to imagine what world and duration of time the Most High has in store for the children that He has always wanted to be on top of the world. You understand? And so coming into this truth, you learn to realize and appreciate just how exact the Most High is with His orders. And the least thing that you could do is to be obedient to what He says, to believe the things that He says. If He says that the salvation is for Israel and nobody else, then so be it, man. Everyone tries to say they don't care what other people say about them. They don't let other people's feelings get to them. But then they'll be the first ones that'll run out the door when they hear that salvation is only for them, because they, you know, our people are so giving and so kind, and we just love to just be evenly, you know, distributed amongst the other nations that are around us, because we're so docile. We've been beaten to a pulp. We've been sold into captivity. We've been indoctrinated by the school systems. We couldn't even imagine thinking that the Most High chose our people to be saved from the condition of being indoctrinated amongst these other nations. And so when we come into this Lashawan Kwadash, this ancient Paleo Hebrew, the least thing that you could do is to lock into these classes, to learn the language, to really put that scholastic effort that it takes to start, you know, nailing these scriptures down and getting an understanding of what it is that we're bringing out here. Isaiah 45 and 17, again, is one of those cornerstone scriptures that go into the truth about the Most High. When we talk about John chapter 3, verse 16, see, that's where they get away with it, because they get away with it in the New Testament, because the New Testament was written in the Greek and the Latin. And so they have a different definition for what world is. And because of that, they try to assume that world means the whole entire planet, when really world means long duration, which can mean forever. But we know that forever in this scripture is talking about Israel and not the entire planet, because we are not going to be ashamed by the other nations. We'll read it one more time. All right. Yasha Allah, Nawashai, Ba Yahweh, Tasha wa Ayata, I will Lamyum, La'ah, Tabashwa, Wala'ah, Ta Kalamwa, Id, I will Lamya, Ida. All right, that is Isaiah 45:17. We've had it on the board for a little bit. I want to go ahead and get into the next verse here so we can finish off the class on a strong note. All right. Now we're going to go to verse 18. All right. Isaiah chapter 45, verse 18. We always read verse 17, but how often do we read verse 18? not as often, right? But it's just as important. It says kaya ka kaya kaha amar Yahweh. Mm, ba ra hashamayim hawa'a hawa'a ha'alahayim yatazar ha'aratazar ha'aratazar wa aisha wa aisha hawa'a kawan kawan na la'a the hawa ara bara la Shabbath. I'm gonna try to fit this all in one. It's not easy to do. La La Shabbath. That's a long verse. Almost didn't fit on there. You know what I'm talking about? So what did we just say? Um, Kabir, go ahead and read Isaiah 45 and 17 in the English, and then again in the Hebrew while I finish this up here. Here, I'm gonna give you the mic.
So it says, Isaiah chapter 45 and verse 18. For thus saith the Lord, they created the heavens. Oh, verse 17. But Israel shall be saved in the Lord with an everlasting salvation. Ye shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end. Verse 18.
When you read that verse, what comes to mind?
I think. Hold on. Israel shall be saved in the Lord with an everlasting. It was just a world without end. The kingdom that stands forever, or a foundation that is made and is not destroyed. Yeah, all these other worlds came to an end, but this world is not ending at all.
We're not going to do the root words of this one. We're going to start here. We'll see the. Now, what we did read in verse 17 was that Israel is a world with an everlasting salvation, which also when we read this, we think about the future, but we also have to understand that it is talking about the past also. Because every time that we've been in captivity, anytime that we've faced any kind of adversity, even if we may have fallen at some point, as far as being cut off from our land, being destroyed, kept from our culture, that we still had found salvation. There's salvation throughout the scriptures. We had been saved during the time of the Maccabees. That was salvation. Especially in the time of Egypt, that was a salvation. And so that everlasting salvation continues to happen time and again. And of course, being that we're getting to that time where there's going to be an everlasting salvation that will not change in its status. We're going to stay on top after this world comes to an end, after this age ends, that our salvation will then truly be everlasting. You know what I'm saying? And here's the reasoning behind that, because it says something so direct and to the point in the previous verse when it says Israel is the chosen nation for that everlasting salvation, not the rest of the world. But it's simply giving you a stern reminder that it is the Most High who chose this, and it's none of your damn business to say otherwise, that it's not fair for the other nations. They're living in their heaven right now. They're living with the ability to go on, hell, month-long vacations and go here and go there. And though they're conditioned as rulers on the earth, and people that are in a better condition than our people is starting to crumble, that doesn't mean they haven't had their fun. Though the Most High has had them, that He's put up with them for a time, you know what I'm saying, in a certain era, that doesn't mean that He hasn't took His sights off of His original plan of bringing Israel back to the forefronts. For thus, now read that in English. Give me verse 18 in English. Mm-hmm. Right. He says, "For thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, God Himself that formed the earth and made it." He hath established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is none else. So when the Most High gives you this order, he's saying this is how it's going to be. I'm the one who set all this up. I'm the one who decides who rises and who falls. The other nations, they always understand that when they're talking about their history being the victor. They're always quick to understand that they're the one that won, and they conquered. Rome conquered. They'll make all the movies about Rome conquering. They make movies like Black Hawk Down, where the military might in Afghanistan and Iraq and all these different things, right? They're so quick to talk about that, but they forget that the Most High is the one who ultimately ordains the time that you rule and the time that your rule comes to an end. And so when he's reminding the earth about this right here, he's reminding them that it's like this because he's the one who made it all, not the other nations. They didn't make the earth. They didn't make the technology they use on the earth. The Most High is the one that ordained that they're even allowed to understand those things. But we want to, as prideful as people are in the flesh and on earth, especially the other nations, they take all the credit to their gods. They take all the credit to themselves, rather than to give thanks to the Most High who gave us the ability to do the things that we do. See, our people are spiritual people. We don't forget that it is the Lord that gave us the ability to do these things. We don't. The other nations, they want to take all the credit to themselves. They want to be like the Most High. They claim that they love God, but their actions speak otherwise. And this is exactly why their kingdom is coming to an end. We saw movies like Oppenheimer, for an example, which recently showed the prestige of a scientist that came up and became the prominent figure in society, only to find so much regret in what he built, and that it was going to be ultimately the undoing of their current age or society, their current world, that they know and have accepted that it is going to end. Since the time that it was made, since the atomic bomb was made, they knew that that was marking the beginning of the end of their society as they knew it, because that it was eventually going to be used in something like World War III. You understand? And so they're starting to find some form of guilt for the things that they've done. But that doesn't change the fact that this is what the Most High planned from the beginning. So it says, Kaya, Kaha, Amar, Yahweh, Bawara'ah, Hashemayim, Hawa'ah. Actually, you know what? Let's read that. Read along with me. 4 is Kaya. Thus, Kaha says, Amar. Yahweh is Yahweh. Bawara'ah, which means who created. Hashemayim, which means the heavens. And what does it mean when it says the heavens? Yep, the heavens. Think about it. He says the heavens. He is God who formed the earth. The heavens would be everything everything beyond the earth. Things in the sky, things beyond the earth, right? That's why the scripture when we read in 1 Samuel where King David said that he was going to feed his body to the king. He was going to feed Goliath's body to the fowls of the heavens, the fowls of the air, the fowls of what's beyond our reach as people that are subject to gravity on the earth. So it says the heavens, which is talking about everything, not just earth, but everything beyond. And then it says he, which is Hawa'ah. Go ahead and repeat that. Ha-Alahayim. He is the powers. He is the powers. Alahayim means powers. The powers. Or which ultimately is him himself. Meaning what? That God is the one who gives the orders and things get done. He is the one who ordains for things to be created and then they get created. You know what I mean? It says, who formed the earth, which is Yatazar Ha'aratazah. Yatazar Ha'aratazah, and made it Wa'aishah. He, Hawa'ah, has established it. Kawana. Kawana. Not in vain. La'ah Tahawa. La'a Tahawa. Who did create it to be inhabited? Bara'ah Lashabath. Bara'ah Lashabath. Who formed it? Yatazarah. Yatazarah. I am Yahweh, and there is no other. I am Yahweh, there is no other. Anya Yahweh Salakia Yahweh Iwad. Anya Yahweh Yahweh Iwad. That's kind of a tongue twister. Yahweh Iwad. So again, the Most High exerting his dominance here. He's saying, "I'm the one who set this up. I could topple down whoever I want to topple down. If Israel's going to be a nation that lasts forever. Let me see things that are right. I declare this is it. This is the one I want to get to. What time is it right now? Perfect. I really want to pick back up on this one next week and go even more in depth on it, but I want to at least get it on the board first. And so, like, if those of you that didn't get a chance to screenshot that, just back up the class a little bit, screenshot. And like I said, it's best for you to write these down. If you're actually writing these scriptures down as we're writing it down, you're going to have one hell of a Hebrew book full of verses that are broken down and explained in detail in ways that you ain't ever going to get from no Christian church. You understand? This is it, at the level that this is. This right here is the pinnacle of higher education. You ain't gonna get this. You'd have to go to you couldn't even go to Yale University to get this. You understand what I'm saying? The value of this information is boundless. Okay. So here we go again. Now we're gonna get verse 19. I mean, use the word tan forever. Let me read one. La'a Batathar Dabarathya Bamakwam Bamakwam Rataza Kashak Kashak La'a. Amarathya. That's crazy. Yaquab, which of course means Jacob. Yaquab, which means Jacob. In vain, there's that same word from the last precept. Tahawa. Quash. Quash. Quash one ya. And ya. The bar. Tazadak. Oh, Salakia. Tazadak, which means righteousness. Ma Magayad. Magayad. Ma yeah, so we're gonna do the root words next week, but I'm gonna go ahead and get the translation up here on the screen for you. Not in secret, I have spoken in a place of the earth. Dark. Hashak. Not. It's a to the seed of Jacob in vain. Seek me, I, Yahweh, speak righteousness. I declare things that are right. So, what is this referring to when it's saying this? Let's read it in English. It says, this is Isaiah chapter 45, verse 19. I have not spoken in secret in a dark place of the earth. I said not unto the seed of Jacob, seek ye me in vain. I, the Lord, speak righteousness. I declare things that are right. And then we'll definitely pick up, and because it continues to really hit home on the fact that what we were talking about in Isaiah 45 and 17 was talking about a world of its own, an age of its own, salvation for Israel. You're not going to twist that around. You're not going to, Christianity is not going to try to say that this doesn't go perfectly along with the John 3:16 breakdown, because after it says in English, world without end, it goes on to explain that the Most High is the one that created the earth, who created the heavens, who created the earth to be inhabited. He didn't do that in vain. He did it for Israel. But because we're narrowing it down to a specific people, that's bad. It's not bad. Remember, the scripture says we will neither be ashamed nor confounded. World without end. La'ai which means world everlasting. And so when we go into verse 19, it says that the Most High did not say this in the dark for us to seek after him for nothing. He didn't tell us to seek after him for nothing, because he's the one that speaks righteousness. If he says that Israel shall be saved and nobody else, that Israel is going to be a world that doesn't end while the other societies, the other nations come to an end of power, he's saying it because it is the right thing to happen. You understand? Black people, Hispanics, Native Americans, you know what I'm saying? Black Hispanics, Native Americans, we are the people that should be on the top. We have to get right. The Most High says these things because they're right, because he knows the potential of Israel to be a righteous example for the entire earth. But it's hard to see that when you're leaning on the other nations, wanting to be like them, wanting to celebrate their customs, wanting to be amongst them, wanting to get along with everybody at work, wanting to kiss ass to move up in your job. You know what I'm saying? Wanting to get that 401k and retire and only care about you and your exact family bubble. There's something bigger going on here. Do you not see that? Do you not see there is a world that's being built right in front of you? If you can't see that, you may not be a part of it. Because this is for those like King David who was willing to stand up when everybody else wanted to stand down. And this truth ain't for everybody. But if you're willing to do what it takes to learn this truth, there's no end to the possibilities of what the Most High's righteousness is in store for those children of Israel, those of the seed of Jacob, who he didn't tell all of this information to in vain. He didn't make the Bible in vain. And the Bible was made for you, not for the whole earth. And if you have a problem with it, see this verse right here. Because the Most High says he's the one that speaks and declares what's right and what's wrong, not you. Who the hell are you? Who the hell am I? I ain't nobody special. I'm just showing you this verse. I'm breaking it down in the Hebrew so that you can see that it is exactly what the Lord is saying. He's coming with the authority of himself. We're not trying to be boastful up here and say that we know everything. We are understanding these scriptures word for word because the Most High is the one that gave us the power to understand them. He's the one that created the earth. Just like how the white man made the nuclear bomb and the F-22 Raptor and the AR-15. The Most High is the one that allowed that. Just like how he's allowing you to understand that this is the truth. Because he says it's the truth. And we're going to continue into that with next class because there's more on this that you have to see to further solidify your belief that this is the home of the truth. And with that, we're the Isupk that started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, 1969. We're under Commanding General Yohana. Here to teach the truth of the Bible that so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native American Indians are the real Israelites of the Bible. Shalom.